We all deserve to have a future where we feel hopeful and secure. As climate change progresses, we as young people are starting to feel that our voice doesn't matter in a world full of marginal gains and money. We fear that we may not have much of a future if our planet continues to be polluted by carbon. We fear the year 2050. However, it doesn't have to be this way. While the nature of carbon dictates that things will get worse before they get better, there is also a possibility for a future where the climate has improved from what it is today. In 77 years, the year 2100 could have two very different outcomes. If we don't act and switch to sustainable practices and renewable energy, then it's entirely possible the planet could be uninhabitable, especially in countries like Australia that are so vulnerable to environmental change. Or alternatively, the planet could be beginning to repair, with restorations to our oceans, forests and biodiversity, and stability in our weather. A world where we don't have to fear the future of our planet. As major parts of the Ballarat community, you have the power to help. We want to be the last generation to live in a world powered by fossil fuels. The future is not as far away as it feels. The time for change is right now. In 2023, there is nothing more important than the future of our planet.
Climate change to blame for up to 17 deaths on Mount Everest. The Guardian. It's not just the climate. We've already breached most of the Earth's limits. The Conversation. A stutter in Earth's icy heartbeat has gravely concerned scientists searching for answers. ABC. Climate change is exacerbating inflation worldwide. Scientific American. Scientists deliver final warning on climate crisis. Act now or it's too late. The Guardian. Human activity is pushing Earth beyond safe boundaries. ABC. These are the headlines I was accosted with in a simple search of the internet, all within the past 48 hours. As a young person, inevitably, I am surrounded by media, and you are too. Media has become such a fundamental part of our daily lives, which makes it logically difficult to ridicule and fault the youth of today for the unbridled pessimism that can sometimes infect our outlook of our rapidly changing world. Because as chronicles and narratives of doubt run rampant, so does the spiral of resignation, despondency, and escapability, especially when it comes to the future of the only planet we can call home. Last year, we were 28 years from our climate deadline. Now, we are 27 years from it. And with the apathy and neglect from global and national leaders, that deadline is imminently looming. Next year, we will be 26 years from it. And if the neglect fails to cease, in the blink of an eye, that deadline will be knocking on our door and authenticating the havoc and extinction we were warned about. This is what we are told. This is what will happen. But what is phrased as inevitable is phrased incorrectly, provided we impel a change. Planet Earth's extinction does not lie on a whim in which we have no control over. It is a choice. Time is ticking, but the tangible, terrifying reality of what will occur in 2050 can be prevented. I believe this because I feel hope. Hope for change, because despite the news I behold, despite the headlines and apathy of leaders, I feel hope because I see it every day. Those who stand for change are starting to be listened to. Young people are being listened to. Laws are changing. Habits are changing. Climate change is being brought to the forefront of people's mind. People are caring, and today is proof. As I'm looking around, I see people who care about renewable energy, who care enough to be here today. I see people who care about keeping fossil fuels in the ground, people who care about being the last to know what life is like being commanded by finite resources, who care about ensuring that there is an earth for my kids and their kids to grow up in. Thank you.
We now invite you to watch two short messages. The first is from the Honourable Lily D'Ambrioso, Minister for Climate Action, Minister for Energy and Resources, and Minister for the State Electricity Commission.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to this special event, the launch of Committee for Ballarat's Ballarat Energy Network. And before I make a few brief remarks, I'd like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as the traditional owners of the land on which I am situated. My respects, of course, go to all elders of the past, the present, and emerging, as well as any Aboriginal elders from other communities who may have joined us today. And given that I'm joining you virtually, I'd like to also acknowledge the traditional owners of Ballarat, the Wadawurrung people. Over the last 8 years, Victoria has established itself as a leader nationally and around the world in the development of clean energy. We've set the goal of achieving 65% renewable electricity generation in Victoria by 2030 and 95% by 2035. Our emissions reduction targets of 75 to 80% below 2005 levels by 2035 and net zero by 2045 are amongst the most ambitious in the world, delivering the fast rate of decarbonisation in Australia. And last year we announced ambitious energy storage targets, at least 2.6 gigawatts of energy storage capacity in Victoria by 2030 and at least 6.3 gigawatts by 2035. We've delivered the greatest annual increase in renewable energy of any state in the country ever and created thousands of jobs through our nation-leading renewable energy auctions. We've also delivered enormous energy storage projects like the 300 megawatt Victorian Big Battery, which is the largest lithium-ion battery in the Southern Hemisphere. In the most recent state budget, we made significant commitments to keep driving the clean energy revolution, with major investments in renewable energy jobs, neighbourhood batteries and safety regulations, along with an initial $1 billion investment to bring back the State Electricity Commission. These policies and investments will have a huge impact on our state's prosperity, creating 59,000 jobs and driving $9.5 billion of investment in our state. Of course, it's vital that we make sure that the benefits of renewable energy are being realised by businesses and communities right across our state. So I'd like to congratulate the Committee for Ballarat on its efforts to forge partnerships and deliver new business models to help achieve its goal of powering Ballarat with 100% renewable energy. These sorts of programs can help to make sure that everyone can benefit from renewable energy and that more of the benefits of new projects stay in the local community. This example of regional collaboration, leadership and action will also help accelerate our transition to a renewable energy future and create the new jobs that will make this possible. So congratulations on your progress today, and I look forward to seeing how you will continue to help Victoria meet its ambitious goals.
The next is a pre-record from Dr Helen Haines, Independent Federal Member for Indi in the North East Victoria.
Hello, I'm Helen Haines, the Independent Federal Member for Indi. What a thrill it is for me today to be congratulating the Committee for Ballarat on this bold plan to locally own energy, to distribute that energy and to profit from it in the local community. We know that our citizens want to engage in practical action on climate change. We know that our citizens want to share the benefits of lower power bills, and we want to see profits flow into rural and regional Australia. This is a bold plan, an ambitious plan, but one that I know can be achieved. In my own electorate of Indi, I've seen the tiny town of Yakandanda shoot for the stars and achieve great work when it comes to locally owned energy. Good luck, Ballarat. I'm really thrilled to participate in a small way with you today.
We would now like to introduce Michael Poulton. Michael is the CEO of Committee for Ballarat, and together with the board and key community members, he has been working to understand how the transition to a renewable energy future can help unlock the potential of Ballarat and the region.
I think we needed a bigger room. Thank you for being here to everybody. It is a little bit overwhelming, and it's really pleasing opportunity for me, but most importantly for the members of Committee for Ballarat who've been talking about this for some time. And can I just acknowledge a couple of people before I start? I think it was Siobhan Dent. I know you're in the room somewhere. Siobhan is a Ross Garneau groupie. Siobhan came to an event of ours with Ross Garneau, and I think towards the end of 2019, and Ross was probably the one who started this sense of, hey, you can do this. Get a vision, get an understanding of what's possible and go chasing it. So really want to acknowledge Ross. Here's an apology for today and sadly couldn't be with us. To Scott White from Environmental Evolution, to Bill Mundy, to Elizabeth and Sandy Gray, Stuart Benjamin and the GNet Network, Federation University, Central Highlands Water, Integra Land Group, Mars, Sovereign Hill, City of Ballarat, and there are many of you, to Andrew Lang, who's here this afternoon, and especially to Osnet and Mondo for their work and leadership, with Dharmika and Champy also in the room today. I apologise, I will have inevitably missed some, but there's been a lot of people contributing to where we are today. I'm going to start with a story of the house that I grew up in. I need my clicker. It's 18 Avondale Grove, Mount Waverley. It was built in the late 50s by my parents at a time when a number of other young couples had bought land in the far outer suburb of Mount Waverley to build their dream homes. When I say build, there were no builders as such. These were DIYers, the original DIYers, building homes by hand, quite literally. Every brick you see in that finished product was made by hand in the old bathtub, which is now in my house, in the back of our yard. The bricks you can't see in the foundations were second-hand bricks from a rundown, pull down somewhere, that each was meticulously cleaned by hand. And up the top there is a very good-looking Mrs. Poulton, way back in the day, cleaning bricks. My family home and others in the neighbourhood were part of a community collaboration. Networks of neighbours coming together to get stuff done. They combined their efforts, and it was the sum of the parts that made for a very effective local community. I was about 10 when one Saturday morning we bought a chainsaw. I still have that chainsaw and it still works. No one else in the neighbourhood needed a chainsaw because the Poultons had one. And if ever there was a tree that went down, the message went out, the Poulton boys would roll up with said saw, ropes and ladders, and they'd get the job done. The only stipulation was we had to take home the wood. The families in Avondale Grove worked together. Interestingly, all the houses were fully electrified. Mains gas wasn't heard of. My house had an open fire and a floor heat in the kitchen, which was laid under lino, under masonite. It was amazing. It was an amazing and highly effective heat source. My dad was a lighting engineer, and during his early days as an apprentice as an electrician, he worked on the Hazelwood Power Station. And many of us will know that Hazelwood went on to be one of the central driving energy networks of the Latrobe Valley. Interestingly, it was while working at Hazelwood that my father contracted mesothelioma, which was only diagnosed a couple of years ago, and he died having lived an incredible life in 2021 at the age of 93. In his mid-70s, KP, my father, was designing solar collectors that pumped sunlight into buildings through fibre optic cable. Light, sunlight, daylight were at the core of his life. He would have loved today. And he once mused, without light, can we really have life? In the 60s, the state government badged homes that were proudly fully electrified. Every house in Mount Waverley, built back then, was fully electrified, built by people who came together to collaborate, to problem solve and deliver on a dream. And here we are, decades later. Same opportunity. Collaborate, problem solve and deliver. Not on a dream, but on a very real and present challenge, so well articulated by both Bella and Ella. The challenge is as great as the Industrial Revolution, and it's a challenge that must see us take carbon out of the atmosphere. We can do this, in part, by powering our lives with renewable energy. We know the world must reduce global warming to less than 1.5 degrees to avert the catastrophic effects of climate change. We know the whole world is transitioning to a renewable energy future, and we know we must do this more quickly than we are. We need to act now, in this decade. And we know that AEMO, the Australian Energy Market Operator, and Chris Bowen, the Minister for Climate Change and Energy, tells us that our national energy grid must modernise. It must be fit for purpose for a new energy future that caters for the literally millions of generation assets we have distributed all over the country. And those distributed assets are growing day by day. We know we are the greatest problem solvers the Earth has ever known. And we know that with collaboration, we can achieve great things. So in energy, we can do better. We can build an energy future across the globe, in Australia, and most importantly, in Ballarat. So what have we got in this town? My house has panels on the roof, pumping out a heap of electricity today. Gary and Helen's house does too. Barb and George's house does. And no doubt there are plenty others in the room whose houses right now are generating electricity. We have commercial and industrial scale operations in this city that are of significance, including a little floating solar piece that sits in the middle of a reservoir, making sure that the overflow systems work. McCain, behind the meter solar farm, 8.2 megawatts, significant amount of investment in their own industries. Haines Paint, this place, panels on the roof that you might have seen when you go through. Add to that, we have capacity for storage. City of Ballarat with its new fleet and emerging fleet of electronic vehicles. We've got pumped hydro that exists now in small scale. We've got charging stations. And importantly, we've got access to bioenergy that can produce electricity and perhaps most importantly, biogas to help us transition away from fossil fuel-based, apparently natural gas, to a biogas version that does take carbon out of the atmosphere and act on zero emissions. A really incredible opportunity for our city to gain a very, very strong foothold in bioenergy. Geelong apparently have a big battery. Let's get the biggest one. Imagine if we could aggregate all of those individual distributed assets. Imagine if we could orchestrate the thousands of individual generation assets in our city or region, distribute them and share them locally, and trade into the national energy market by selling the excess capacity that we will generate into the grid. This is not a microgrid. This is not Ballarat being an island tucked away somewhere just looking after itself. This is the capacity to aggregate and orchestrate significant amounts of power, including bioenergy, wind, solar, storage, hydro, pumped hydro, hydrogen, anything else you can think of that we don't even know exists right now, the ability to aggregate those efforts. Now imagine that we can do all this with our own community-owned network that retains the profits locally, invests back in the community, reduces the cost of energy by developing further assets and creating new jobs, advancing R&D, and importantly, building the social value and the community wealth that we need to ensure this is shared by all in our community. This is our vision. Australia's first community-owned energy network powering a regional city of more than 100,000 people with 100% locally generated renewable energy. At its core is two very simple concepts. First, that you aggregate locally generated energy, share it, distribute it locally, and then trade on the national energy market. Secondly, in partnership with retailers and network stakeholders, BEN can be an energy network that is owned by local business, community and industry. Mums and dads, corporates, small and large businesses, young investors, all buying and selling in a locally owned generation company. Committee for Ballarat's purpose, through its members, is to inspire and unlock potential. There is no more important issue for our planet than combating climate change, and there is no greater opportunity for our community than to unlock the renewable potential and capability of this region. How do we get there? Today's the first step. We'll describe to you, far better than I can, we'll describe to you a project that's about data gathering, optimising and reducing your energy consumption, and importantly, building the business case to attract the necessary investment that can deliver on the vision. We need the data, we need your assistance, we can help you do that by understanding how you might be able to make some cost savings, and importantly, we can frame up the model that has been demonstrated in Yakandanda, in Mallacoota, in Hepburn, and all the way around the country at a small scale to model that on a large scale. BEN's about delivering locally distributed energy that generates, distributes, shares and exports energy into the network. It is community energy on steroids. And with a multi-stakeholder approach, we can achieve this. And just like those who built their dream homes in the suburb of Mount Waverley, collectively, together, we can achieve this vision. And I'm really grateful that you've come and shared some time with us today. Thank you.